Fuck around, make my 40 pop.
Alright guys, in this video I'm going to be going over the staff behind episode 208, and I'm pretty sure we all know right now episode 208 is going to have BoruShiki going up against Boro himself. This right here is going to be a very good episode, an episode that a lot of people have actually been waiting for. Before I do go through these animations, I do want to answer a question I have been seeing a lot of people ask. A lot of people have been asking if they will actually extend the Boro versus BoruShiki fight, because the actual fight itself isn't necessarily going to be that long. My problem with them extending the fight is going to be, it might make BoruShiki look a little bit weaker than he actually is. For example, in the Boruto manga, that fight was extremely brief, because we understand that BoruShiki is that strong. He literally end Boro in like one hit. If they do extend it, it might just seem like BoruShiki is having a little bit more trouble with Boro, and if that's the case, again, it might make BoruShiki look a little bit weaker. So they can extend it, but they have to do it the right way. Now, relating that to the animation of the actual fight, because the fight is going to be so short, the animation for the whole episode doesn't necessarily have to be that great. Honestly, there just needs to be a couple of things in the episode that has to be animated to damn near perfection. That right there is just my opinion, but even still, the staff behind this episode looks absolutely amazing. I'm not necessarily going to call it a dream team like how I called episode 204. 204 was a dream team, but this right here is definitely an elite team. And when it comes to animation directors, I'm going to say those three right there are definitely a dream team. But the first things first, I do want to talk about this right here. Comes from Anime Blue. Anime Blue basically tweets out the staff behind a lot of the episodes. Anime Blue tweeted out the staff of episode 209, episode 210, and episode 211. So if you guys do want to get a head start on seeing the staff of those episodes, there you guys go. Check out at Anime Blue 00. But into the actual animation staff, the first thing that I do want to look at has to be the studios. Now, Studio Pierrot is going to be the legendary studio. Everybody knows Studio Pierrot as being the GOAT studio. Studio Pierrot is essentially behind all of the big episodes. For example, Boruto episode 65. Boruto episode 65 is arguably the best episode of Boruto thus far. Obviously, Naruto and Sasuke vs Momoshiki, this fight right here was absolutely amazing. Not only that, the last fight that we did see, which is again arguably one of the best episodes that we have seen so far, Naruto and Sasuke vs Jigen, that right there was also animated by Studio Pierrot as well. Again, they're literally behind like all of the huge fights of the Boruto series, so them being on episode 204, 100% I am super happy for. Now, it wasn't just only these fights, there was also multiple other fights. Kawaki vs Garo, episode 189, Team 7 vs Deep with the Compression Rasengan, episode 175. Literally all the big episodes that you guys could probably think about, except for episode 207, the last episode. But majority of the big episodes that you guys could think about, Studio Pierrot is usually behind those episodes as well. Now, the next studio is going to be Maru Animations. By the way, I've been hearing that Studio Pierrot is going to be animating the contents that were actually in the Boruto manga, so that's going to essentially be the BoruShiki versus the Boro fight. I did talk about how, again, that fight right there might be extremely brief, so Studio Pierrot just animating that fight right there. That right there is going to be the big part that everybody's going to be paying attention to. Now, the other stuff, supposedly Maru Animations is going to be animating that. Maru Animations, they're not necessarily a bad animation studio. They're decent. They're just not Studio Pierrot. They did animate Boruto episode 199. Boruto episode 199 was a decent episode, a little bit, I wouldn't necessarily say lackluster. I'd say it didn't necessarily meet the expectations of a lot of people, mainly because we were kind of expecting Boruto episode 189 level animation, and literally I think that episode right there probably has the best animation of all time. So them not necessarily meeting that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a bad studio, but still, episode 199 was definitely a very good episode. So of course, them being on this episode right here is also a very good thing. Now, again, the next thing that I do want to talk about has to be the animation directors. This right here seems like a dream team, not gonna lie. So with the animation directors, I'm gonna group the first two together. So Retsu Okuara and also Kazuya Saito, I'm gonna group those two together, mainly because they've worked on a lot of the same episodes together. Now, the first one that I do want to talk about has to be Boruto episode 166. This right here was Team 7 versus Deepa. Now, if you guys don't necessarily remember this one, we didn't expect this episode to be good. It was just absolutely fire. Deepa had a little bit of hype going into it, but honestly, like, this right here just, it took it to the next level. Like this, the animation definitely looked very fluid. I'm super excited for those two to actually be on it. But also, that wasn't the only one as well. They also animated Boruto episode 175. Now, if you guys don't necessarily recall Boruto episode 175, people were making a case that this episode right here is also a top 5 episode of the Boruto series. And this right here is essentially the final battle between Team 7 and Deepa when Boruto did use the compression Rasengan. Literally everybody I know loves this episode. So again, those two working together on an episode like this again is also very, very good. Now the next animation director is going to be Manami Sugimoto. Now Manami Sugimoto is very interesting. Manami actually did work on Boruto episode 192. Now if you guys don't necessarily recall what episode 192 was, this was the episode when Kawaki was actually a kid. Now the animation wasn't necessarily that crazy because my review actually said the animation was good. There wasn't a lot of fighting in this episode, so we couldn't necessarily judge the animation, but there's a scene where Kawaki's father ripped up a piece of paper and that animation looked extremely fluid, but the art style in this episode looked absolutely amazing. You could just tell the quality of this episode was insane. I think that this episode right here is like literally like a 1 of 1. I don't think that we're ever going to get to see an episode like this again. Now Manami also did work on the Kawaki trailer. Now if you guys don't necessarily recall how the Kawaki trailer looked, it looked absolutely amazing. This right here was before Kawaki was even introduced. They were spoiling Kawaki to the point where you didn't even need to introduce Kawaki anymore, bro. We just know who he is at this particular point. But there was definitely some very fluid scenes in this right here. The animation was definitely decent. A lot of people did love it. Like Boruto and Kawaki going at it before we even get to see Kawaki introduced. Like this right here was just like look how fluid it is, bro. It was just amazing. It was just amazing. Even the art looks very good. So again, Manami being on episode 208 is definitely a very good thing. Now the last one when it comes to the screenplay is going to be by Toko Machida. Toko Machida did actually work on, I believe, episode 178. This episode right here was, I think, the first episode that Ao was actually introduced. So again, this right here was not necessarily a huge fighting episode, but it was still nonetheless a very good episode in regards to actual screenplay, in regards to actual directing. It was definitely decent. This right here was definitely a very emotional episode. This was the episode when they were at the memorial and we did get the backstory of Ao and how he actually did survive the Tail Beast bomb. It was absolutely amazing. So him being on episode 208 again is very, very good. I'm gonna say, because the screenplay isn't necessarily, let's say if the screenplay was done by someone who actually did like Boruto episode 65 or like Boruto episode 204, I would say it was a dream team. But because that's not the case, I'm just gonna say it's an elite team. I think this episode right here is definitely going to look very, very pretty, especially the scenes where BoruShiki is actually going to be involved. No one right here is going to leave like disappointed. I'm pretty sure everybody right here is going to actually love episode 208, and especially the scenes where BoruShiki is actually involved. But let me know what you guys think about the staff in the comment section below. And I always forget to shout out my own Twitter. Like, my Twitter is Baara Blood. But regardless, let me know what you guys think about the staff in the comment section below. It's been your boy Baara B, and we out.
It's a knife.